I'm Agnes, and I'm here in the Hub Culture Studio in Davos in the spring. You wouldn't know it's spring because the dark clouds are here. I'm very pleased to be joined by Agnes Kalibata. She's the president of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. So first of all, Agnes, thank you so much for making time to come by. Give us a sense of where you see us right now, where you have the war in Ukraine, ongoing concerns about the recovery from the pandemic, worries about food prices and food insecurity, inflation. There's a lot. Give us a sense of what that means in terms of your view of food insecurity, first of all.
Thank you for having me. The world is at a very critical moment right now because we're just recovering from COVID-19. And you might say that this war has actually put us, blindsided us into a situation where since 2014, we've been going through a climate crisis, at least on the African continent. Immediately after that, we see lots of floods here and there. Immediately after that, we are seeing COVID-19. So we are in a situation where at the end of COVID-19, 125 million people were net new in terms of hungry people. But now with the Ukraine crisis, we are going to have probably another 100 million people that are hungry, that don't have the means to put the right food on the table or even any food at all. So really the crisis right now is about how many people can be able to afford a meal, how many people can be able to afford to feed a nutritious meal to their children. That's the crisis.
Tell me, if we zoom from the world down to Africa, give us a sense of a story that might bring that to life in terms of what it means for an African family.
So for an African family, there are a number of families that are young-based families because the husband is young, the wife is young. Mostly they are doing a decent job in a restaurant. They are able to feed their children. Between the two of them, they can feed their children. COVID-19 comes, one of them loses a job because you can't keep both of them in a job. Businesses struggle on today. The other person is going to lose a job because some of the businesses are going to have to shut down just because the pressure, 2-year pressure from COVID-19, now the pressure from increasing prices of food, increasing prices of fuel, just means that most businesses are beginning to shut down. It also means that most families don't have the jobs they need to be able to feed their families. But in terms of really looking at it from a global perspective, even an African global perspective, the challenge will be that for those communities where every dollar counts when it comes to food, they're going to be struggling. So that family that I just described is going to have to ask itself, what food do we put on the table? How nutritious is that food? How many meals can we afford today? That's the challenge because it's really about a food price crisis.
So it's one of the setbacks that we've seen, in the last few years. We've seen almost every single one of the Sustainable Development Goals fall back. The food is now the main focus for many. But I know that you also see this as an opportunity to revive some interest in how we increase food security and how we give people support that they need. They already know the solutions in many cases. How do we give them the support that they need to solve some of the problems? So
the African continent has the ability to produce nearly every food that it needs, even including wheat. But really the system, the infrastructure, the system for farmers to access technologies have not kept pace with being able to provide those services to farmers. So the opportunity now is to ensure that those technologies that we know are available now, as AGRA, we work to ensure that farmers have access to better seed, access to fertilizers that countries have been trying to work on to ensure that farmers can increase yields. Africa still produces probably 3 to 5 times less than the rest of the world. This is the opportunity to ensure that African farmers have access to the inputs they need to be able to produce more to the extension they need. Africa has stopped investing in extension. It's one of the biggest challenges of the food system. if we can invest back into extension, if we can invest back into giving farmers access to inputs, if we can use this opportunity as an opportunity to boost families forward, not to feed them. I mean, there are places where feeding is going to be necessary, but let's look at this as an opportunity to boost families forward and give them the means they need so that they can build a base. So let's look at this as a chance to build a base of food security for the future, a base to also reduce poverty, because most of these people, that's their job. They work into these areas and they want to see this contribute to poverty reduction. So for the rest of the world, it's an opportunity to actually boost these families where inclusivity is becoming a major problem. We had actually seen in the Food System Summit, there are so many families that are being left behind. Can we now come through for them and help push them forward? Because they have they have their labor, they have, if it rains, climate change again here, if it rains, they should be able to do a good job.
You know, I remember when I interviewed Claude Gibillard from WFP in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was saying, you know, the DRC is actually a fertile place. He joked that you sort of, you know, you eat a tomato, some of the seeds drop on the ground and actually come back in a couple of weeks and there's a tomato plant growing. Some parts of Africa are in fact very fertile. Others are really struggling with drought and with the effects of climate change. But I know that one of the things that you care deeply about is the right kind of seeds that might grow in all kinds of places. And in many cases, they're native to the land. People actually already know what they are. So how can we encourage and help or support people in terms of finding their own solutions?
I mean, one of what we do as AGRA is to just ensure that we are building capacity for communities to have access to yield, to better yields in things they already grow, in crops they already grow. Is it millet? Can they have a better yielding variety of millet? Is it sorghum? Okay. Can they have a better yielding variety of sorghum? Is it cassava? This is already happening. I think what's not happening enough is massive access, right? So we do have these technologies available, but we'd like to push them so that massive numbers of people have them, so that they can move their yields from 1 ton to 3 tons. If we can have that as the average per country, these countries would prosper, these communities would prosper.
And they could feed the world.
And they could feed the world. And what would just be remaining is investing in the logistics of doing that, of feeding the world. That's probably one of the biggest challenges Africa hasn't invested in enough. The logistics of feeding the world, feeding themselves and feeding the world. That's something we have to invest in, the infrastructure bit of it, the distribution systems. You don't buy food, right? I mean, you don't grow food, but you have food because there's a distribution system that works for you.
I do have a very small plot in my backyard, and I do grow a little bit of food.
That's great. That's great. But most people don't, and they depend on a distribution network that takes food to them. That's what we need to grow in Africa and ensure that, you know, we can use farmers to actually get food to the people who need it because they can afford it, and then in the process grow these farmers and these communities.
What's your message to the people watching this video? What can they do to support what you were talking about in terms of supporting Africa and supporting farmers?
You know, last year we held the Food System Summit, really worried about the challenges of the food system, and there are quite a number. The biggest challenge of the food system is the fact that there are so many people left out of the ability to have decent food. This crisis actually throws so many more people out of that ability to have decent food. But in Africa, for example, so many people then have the ability in terms of land, in terms of their own labor, but they need the seeds, they need the fertilizers, they need the boost I was talking about to be pushed forward so that they can produce, so that they too can use that ability to produce to get out of poverty. We can use this crisis to get those families out of poverty. So let's give them the boost they need.
Dr. Agnes Kalibata, thank you very much for joining us here in the Hub Culture Studio, and I'm Edie Lash.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.